they chat about
They
you.
they chat about me, yes.
Dayspring is like, yeah, lipid energy model, yada, yada, yada. Some engineer who's never published a paper, even though actually now you have more papers in this decade than he does. And just, a hand wavy. The optics are bad. Oh, speaking of which, Bryan Johnson won't get a CTA.
What?
Yeah. He thinks the radiation risk is too high. As absurd and extreme as it sounds to be like, oh, we could conquer death. I guess I'm speaking to the engineer here. Isn't it just an engineering problem?
Carnivore diet in particular, is it going to be more mainstream in 5 years from now?
Yes. People think it's a blip. I think it's just going to become more and more mainstream and as a viable option. I think it's going to go the same way as keto.
Just a quick heads up that we did have some technical issues with Nick's track in a few places. There's a little bit of an echo, and we did some filtering to help correct for it. So with that out of the way, let's get started.
Yeah. And social media permits for that even when the journals won't step up, like the recent xanthelasma report and JAMA Cardio. It's like, look, they got egg on their face. Whether or not they choose to do anything about it. So yeah, that's a great boon of social media.
It is. But it also does help to further expose, this is just the internet being forever, exposes hypocrisy, right? Like if you're inconsistent, it's pretty easy to pull up all the cases in which you're being inconsistent, which again is easier to avoid if you're not willing to take on any challenge, because then you can just choose not to respond to those people who are going to call you out on it.
Yeah.
But you should care, especially when it comes to science. You should care about how consistent you are with what data you like and what data you don't like, and how you do your analysis or how you criticize others who do the analysis similar to yours. It should be relevant.
What do you think, since we're kind of rifling through slowly over the arc of this podcast, different social media figures, and since the cholesterol code movie that we saw on Friday, how do you think Peter Attia's dialogue around lipids, in the light of the research we are doing, has evolved or not evolved? And do you think he's applying any double standards to his logic and dialogue around lipids, ApoB, cardiovascular risk? As my first question.
You know, I think I've chatted with you about this before, and there's even a donor kind of involved now who wants me to do a respectful response video.
You should.
Going back to our prior long podcast. So because I'm not going to get myself into more of a mode of content creation, but I like more of this long form anyway, I may end up doing that. I will concede that so he and I recorded in 2018. Shortly after that, there was this 5-part series that was recorded with Thomas Dayspring. Without question, at that time, it was ApoB all the way. I want to say 3 years later, maybe 4, he'd recorded with Dayspring again, and there were a lot of fascinating things that had, I wouldn't say changed radically, but seemed to be more in line with the direction that seemed closer to where I was at, such as him mentioning a case study of a female who had very high LDL and LDLP. And it sounded almost like he was hinting off that she might be a lean mass hyperresponder, but she didn't have any coronary artery calcification. So there was imaging involved, and she seemed to be metabolically healthy. This is if my memory serves correctly. And said that he's choosing not to do lipid lowering, which stunned me because she had high LDL, high ApoB. And Dayspring kind of chiming in favorably, going, well, yeah, it's not just all about LDLP or something like that. I was like, oh, wow. So this is actually a shift or something to that effect, where there's at least some acknowledge that metabolic health and imaging reinforcing a lack of cardiovascular disease gets back to that position I was talking about earlier. It sounds like we're all kind of, looking towards this one place where a lot of clinicians might be taking that on. That said, since then, his book had gotten published. I bought his book and listened to the chapter on ApoB, seemed very much back to ApoB as king, and also LP little a. And you know what? I kind of want to get back to LP little a since we've got the time. But that ApoB, really, what it comes down to is it's mediated. The disease of atherosclerosis is ultimately mediated by ApoB in the broader independent sense, right? And then there's a more recent podcast, quite literally released, I want to say last week, with Dayspring, where Dayspring states it's ApoB and triglycerides. And that I found to be somewhat interesting, and even more interestingly, that Dayspring, and you've been following him on social media just as long as I have, is emphasizing we like to have triglycerides under 100.
Dayspring now?
Yes,
I've seen
correct.
him say anything below 300 is fine.
500.
500.
That actually at 500 and above, then you've got concerning levels of hypertriglyceridemia.
So why is he changing his tone?
Well, here's what, if I'm trying to steelman his position, he might say, oh, well, under 100 is optimal. That's kind of the language he's using now.
Okay.
But, and I'm very tepid in approaching this. I think that I've not only had these conversations myself with him 5 years ago before I'd gotten blocked, but I've seen him have these discussions with others where even a 200, 300 is not considered as concerning as long as ApoB is low. So that ApoB still was king, as it were, for atherosclerosis. But that said, it is still in this, in this podcast, somebody had sent me a clip from it. It said something like ApoB is still the game, still the ball game, right?
Why did he block you? Do you remember?
I don't know. It surprised everyone at the time because I hadn't said anything negative about him or anything along those lines. It just kind of came out of the blue. So I don't know.
He's an interesting character to me because he's definitely very confident with his claims, but he doesn't seem to really want to engage on the intellectual points. In particular, I mean, he's never and I've asked just like direct questions to some of his claims, like, do you have any evidence to support this claim? Like, for example, he was once saying that ketosis ketosis decreases LDL receptors. He made the direct claim. I'm like, do you want to provide some evidence of that? I have evidence to the contrary, actually. And he's never ever, literally not once, responded to me on any front. He's not blocked me, ever. He just never responded to me. Complete ghost. And like, I have, 3 times the size of his social media following. So like, people notice when I comment on him. It's not like this is going under the radar. It's not like me commenting to Joe Rogan.
And hasn't he also responded to people who've responded to you?
Yeah. There have been threads where like I drop a comment and somebody responds to me, then he'll respond to them, but just completely ghost my comment.
Interesting.
It is interesting. And then on top of that, blocking you and being quite mean and cruel and credential shaming you, which it does not show him in a good light. And his colleagues even commented it does not show him in a good light. And some of the misleading claims he's made or false claims he's made, even, well, actually on our podcast with Chris McCaskill, Chris called Dayspring out for presenting misleading information. Never respond to it.
And I have to reinforce what I've said to you and many others publicly many times over, which is that I actually genuinely feel like I owe both Peter Attia and Thomas Dayspring a debt because quite literally the foundation of lipidology to me was through them. First with Peter Attia with the Straight Dope on Cholesterol series, which he had originally, and Dayspring used to have all of these lectures on lecturepad.org. I think it's now defunct and I think you can't get to them anymore, but it's really advanced stuff, but that's where I started learning a lot of what I know today. And in my mind, for much of those early years, the 2015, 2016, 2017, I kept thinking if I could just get this in their hands, if I can get these data in the hands in these early stages of the lipid energy model, boom, they're gonna go, oh, we got it from here. That's great. In my mind, they're going to the PhD teams and they're writing it up on the chalkboard. That was my Hollywoodized version of science at that time. And for what it's worth, I credit Peter for having me on his podcast. It was an interesting experience, which I'll get into once I do my respectful response video when I re-listen to it. The beginning of it is probably the most famous. But that said, I did at least get it in front of him, so I know that he became aware of it. To the larger question you were asking, what was I expecting when we actually had these data literally being published and being put out? I did think he would comment in some way, and I think I made this prediction to you. I don't I didn't think he would, like, devote an episode to it. I figured it'd be something like it'd be in his newsletter, maybe he makes a tweet about it, something to that effect. But I brought this up in my talk at COSI. Absence of proof is not proof of absence, but absence of response can be some of the most powerful data of all. That was my longer version of the quote.
And I think it's gonna be even more power I mean, like I said earlier, after this movie drops, I think it's kind of it's an inevitability. You have to have the conversation. Not having the conversation is gonna be so conspicuous.
Everyone's
The
gonna
optics are gonna be way worse than ever having the conversation could be. So,
right.
I think it's inevitable.
Because we both do know that both Attia and Dayspring, again, getting back to what domains they're chatting about, they chat about low carb, they chat about carnivore,
Well, they chat about
they
you.
they chat about me, yes.
Dayspring is like, yeah, lipid energy model, yada yada yada. Some engineer who's never published a paper, even though actually now you have more papers in this decade than he does. Um, and just a hand wavy. The optics are bad. It's just embarrassing for them. Um, Particularly Dayspring. I don't have any bone to pick with Peter. I honestly think Peter will be in the long arc of things a great ally if he's true to his word and open to visiting his concepts around cardiovascular health, ApoB based on new and emerging data. What's about to come should be compelling.
Well, I believe in the 10% rule. You and I have chatted about this before. It makes sense that there's not this kind of linear progression to paradigm shifts if this is a paradigm shift. I'm not claiming for sure that is, but let's say that it is. Then it's that first 10% that's the hardest. But once you've got 10% of credible people in this thoughtful scientific minds who are going, oh, this makes sense. I'm starting to believe this. Then it's a tipping point, and all of a sudden you've got a lot of shifts in real time. And then the question becomes, who's in that 10%? Is Peter in that 10%? Is Dayspring in that 10%? Is Simon Hill in that 10%? Is
It's a
Chris
benefit to be.
is Chris McCaskill in that 10%? Right.
I think so.
I actually think Chris McCaskill
Is it
could
the
be
lean
one.
mass hyper-responder adopter? I think so. I mean,
Well,
I think with both Chris and Simon, what they would say, if I had to guess, this is putting words in their mouth, but if I had to guess, would be, yes, this is relevant, but in terms of clinical management and individual choice, it's mostly relevant to specifically lean mass hyper-responders as a small sector of the overall population.
I know that that's the new goalpost, I'm just going to call it that,
Okay.
where it's sort of like, okay, fine. This group over here, lean mass hypers, they give the same answer you do, but it's a bit reluctant. Like, okay, fine. These guys are probably low risk for cardiovascular disease, but this is a tiny little off on an island, far away, distant, teensy fraction of a sliver. You know why I'm going on like this? It's kind of another way to be hand wavy and say, um, pretty much doesn't count, right? Even though the Lean Mass Hypersmarter Facebook group, as you know, is 13,000
13,000.
freaking members at this point, right?
Right.
Uh, the thing I'm interested in that we rarely, you and I, get that much in depth about, but should, is I'm still not myself. I don't know that I ever have been. I'm still not convinced in the concentration gradient concept of the lipid hypothesis.
No, they just by bulk flow, like, oh, you have more ApoB, and it's going to shove its way into
Right.
under the endothelium and just get stuck there, and then you're doomed.
Right, especially now that there's broader acknowledgement of transcytosis, which is an active process.
Right.
So, as I was chatting about, and as I'll chat about with everybody, probably here in this podcast who's into lipids, what is the stimulatory mechanism? How is that concentration stimulating cells to then decide to transcribe, translate all of these.
Yeah.
Greater vesicle transport. Like, you have to have chaperoning proteins. You have to expend ATP to get that through the lumen. I don't see anything anywhere remotely close to it. And it'd be very testable. I mentioned this on Simon's podcast. You could check mRNA concentrations to just see if there's more messengers for people like you and me when we're lean mass hyperresponders. Is that happening more in a distinct way that seems to be inducible, right? Where you can actually induce the higher levels. Because that theoretically could be done even in short spans of time. You should be able to actually see that.
Right.
But, and I'm not even saying that that's not the case, because as you probably already know, and I'm going to geek out just a tiny bit more here. I still also hypothesize. I don't put this in the top tier hypothesis set, but it's pretty high up there. That I believe that lean mass hyperresponders are transcytosing more ApoB lipoproteins to meet structural demands. I think that they actually move through the endothelial layer more of these ApoB lipoproteins, for example, to meet the elasticity of adipocytes.
Yeah, it's a flux question,
Right.
not like a steady state level question. I guess maybe this is a bad analogy. I like coming up with analogies on the fly and seeing how they stick. But like, imagine you have like a parking lot, right? And you don't want the parking lot to be too full. If people are coming in and then parking for 4 hours, the parking lot's going to fill up for a really long, like really quickly. And you're going to have cars driving around, getting stuck, traffic, yada, yada, yada. You could have many more cars flux through that parking lot if each person was coming in, going in 15 minutes, coming back out and leaving. You would end up with a lot fewer cars in the parking lot, despite a lot more car flux through the parking lot, but because of different demands on the system.
Yes. I don't know if I'd use the parking lot, only because the elasticity is the bigger part of this component. If your parking lot boundary were made of car parts, right, then it makes a little bit more sense that the cars, when they come in, they get pulled apart so that they can then be added, so that it can expand out the zone that's the parking lot. Then it connects a bit more, right?
We're talking in different levels and probably compounding analogies.
Yeah, we're
Help
probably
people.
making it. We're
My
just
point was
confusing
that,
everybody.
like, there with these things, there's so much that we can't see from steady state levels about flux through a system.
Right.
And just because you have more in the blood does not mean you automatically end up with more accumulating in the depot zone, be that under the endothelium or parking lot.
Right. But importantly, the present day lipid hypothesis, where incorporating transcytosis being a major factor toward that, let's call it the chance encounter of the consequential ApoB lipoprotein binding to the proteoglycan that gets stuck there forever. That being the random chance component. The more there is transcytosis overall, the more the likelihood is that it occurs, right? So if I'm right on structural demand driving greater transcytosis of ApoB lipoproteins, then it actually puts the lipid energy model in diametric opposition to the present day lipid hypothesis.
We'll find out in due time.
And that's kind of exciting, even though it's a little scary, because of course we kind of have a little bit of an advantage. I don't know when I'm going to be publishing this, but we kind of have a little bit of an advantage right now in being able to allow for those to be separate pieces. The mechanistic doesn't have to necessarily apply to the risk. And I kind of enjoy that, because I feel like we can then get more done over here. The risk being kind of helping us to answer the risk with Lundquist, for example, right now, ahead of the mechanistic, I think is somewhat advantageous. Although this sort of sucks away a little bit of the excitement level from over here. But if it turns out to be true, that this structural demand transcytosis hypothesis that I'm advancing, I mean, that's a big deal, because that really is, as far as I know, the last place where lipid hypothesis interjects. I don't know. It'd be cool.
So much to learn. I mean, we're really just on the cusp of this becoming like a field of study in and of itself. We've talked about this for a long time, but it's like, you, me, and Adrian and the team around us kind of like with very little funds trying to drive this forward. And we haven't quite gotten to that point, but there is going to be a point where this just gains enough momentum that there are multiple teams studying with their own independent resources from multiple angles. And you want that in science. You want independent groups attacking the question at complementary angles. I'm confident we're going to get there this decade, but we're just not there yet.
Well, here's a tough question to approach you on. What do you think the odds are that one or more teams has a lot more backing to try to, let's say, create a mutation of this, their own version, for example, of lean mass hyperresponders, which is 80% our work or 70% our work, but some new, 20 or 30%. And then they say, well, this is our creation. But they have greater backing because they're kind of more ingrained in what's the conventional research right now.
I think I'm not concerned about that. I think that's one of the things about social media is like, maybe during the time of like Watson and Crick, um, that might have flown. But now, like, just all the dialogue around this, the freaking movie,
Yeah, that's true.
like how are they going to be like, yeah, weren't aware of this thing. Let's ignore the 10 papers that are out there, soon to be 11, and the movie. Like, you can't.
That's true. The
It's not
movie,
plausible.
I
It's
think
not plausible. It was a bad look.
I
So
think
no.
the movie probably is. Again, I'm so biased, so I don't know, but I really do think it's going to be a game changer, a
Right.
real game changer.
Right. But to your broader point about maybe somebody with a different opinion on this space trying to recapture and rebrand some of the work we're doing, I'm not concerned about that at all for two reasons. One, I actually like applaud it as a foil to what's going on now from the quote detractors in academia, citing the circulation article, the xanthelasma article, which wasn't lean mass hyperresponders, but like these tremendously weak attacks on low carb that just discredit academia. Like the problem with them, and we've articulated this elsewhere, but I'll articulate it again. Like, say take the xanthelasma case or the circulation case. Let's take the circulation case because it's directly relevant to lean mass hyperresponders. I would presume in the universe of 13,000 plus lean mass hyperresponders, there's at least one who's had a heart attack.
I would bet there's Bryan several.
Right.
I would bet on it.
Probabilistically.
Right.
Like it would be basically impossible for not one to have had a heart event. So you can cherry pick any case report you want in the universe of available people. And you want to have a cautionary tale, fine. But when you put up something that is a blatant lie, and they're not even a lean mass hyperresponder, but the clinical like narrative is a lie, the implication is this is the best hand you have to play. That's a bad look. Because that actually raises the question of like, wait, this is the best you have? Then I thought after reading this, maybe the risk profile is actually lower than I previously thought. That's where my mind went. I'm like, you really
Yeah.
think it get better?
I mean,
And so just to wrap up the point, like if another team actually comes at this from a quote detractor angle, but rigorously so, then I could only imagine whatever data they put out might be informative. And hopefully they'd be kind enough to open their books and give us access to their data so we can take a alternative perspective if we feel it's warranted, and then learning would occur.
yeah. I don't know, but I made a prediction at the beginning of this year, which I'll just say again here. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a lean mass hyperresponder case series that's attempting to go a step ahead of that. Literally several different cases. Now there's a wide enough patient pool. Now there will be the potential for something that seems to be a lot more solid because it'll be a real series, and they may hit the real lean mass hyperresponder cut points and have, I don't know, 6, 8, 10,
Right.
something like that. And to your point, it's one I make all the time too, which is that out of 13,000, what are the odds there wouldn't be people who've had heart attacks? Every population, I don't care what their LDL levels are, I don't care what their health levels are, the more sizable it gets, the more likely they're going to be affected by the number one killer in the world. That's why you do prospective data. Prospective data, now you're looking forward, now you're defining the cohort in advance.
Mm-hmm.
That's, of course, always going to be better than retrospective. I don't know how many times, and I can only imagine how many times it's happened to you as well, where somebody tags me as a lean mass hyperresponder. Hey, I've been at these levels for upteenth years, and my CAC is 0. My CT angiogram is clean, my
Yeah.
etc. And I don't retweet them. I only have one anecdote that I basically tweeted and promoted, and it's the one we published. And it's because and that one that we published, we lay it on thick that it's an anecdote and that there's more research to do. So all
You
the
mean Bryan?
yes, all the caveats are
He
baked in.
forgot
Well,
about that.
yeah,
Is any secret anymore? No, the caveats are baked in.
yeah, the caveats are baked in and should be, right? For
Yeah.
anything that's anecdotal. And and for what it's worth, yours is more prospective than people realize because I can vouch for the fact that you said this to me before the scan came out because I was cautioning you that because you had that disease background that we discussed earlier in the podcast, you might actually have like things like chronic inflammation, which tend to associate with greater development of plaque. But you said then, and I so respect you for it, you were like, the data are what the data are. We're just going to publish whatever it is. And yeah, came back clean and knock on wood. Hopefully it's that way next time you get one.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh, speaking of which, Bryan Johnson won't get a CTA.
What?
Yeah. He thinks the radiation risk is too high. So thus far,
What?
his brags on that his heart risk is just for LDL. So you want to just actually, I bring this up because do you want to comment on how much CTA radiation exposure actually is? Because if he's going to boast about his heart health, I'd like to see a CTA.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't I okay. If he doesn't want to get a CT angiogram, at a minimum, he should get a CAC. And a CAC is zero point 0.6 millisieverts, and it may have even come down further from there, which is about a mammogram and a half, roughly,
How does that
right?
compare to an international plane trip? You've
Oh,
gone to India and around the world a few times.
yeah. I
A lot less.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't. No, it's
Ah,
not
it's
a
not
lot
less.
less. No, no, no.
No.
A plane ride's not that bad, but I do know this, and it's regularly
With
cited.
like a plane trip, like going through X-rays at the airport,
Oh,
flying in
that's
the air,
true. That might be
like
worse.
the
I,
exposure is a lot higher. I could be wrong. I'm not a radiologist, so people can fact check me on that. But I
yeah,
think the exposure is higher.
I don't think it is. I think, you're right. The scans now are like half of a plane ride, and it's sort of frustrated me because I have, what is it? Pre-PRE, which lets you get through and not get the scan. But every once in a while, they choose me randomly, and they're like, "Oh, but" I'm like, I don't wanna." I did the scan, and they were like, "Oh, you didn't hold yourself right," and I'm out, and I'm like, "I don't wanna do another scan." They're like, "Oh, why?" I'm like, "Because of the radiation exposure. I already get enough radiation as it is." They're like, "It's only like half of a flight." I'm like, "That's too much. I don't want half of a flight."
You're doing it a lot, but yeah, no, I don't think a single CTA, definitely not a single CAC, is an undue burden to expect.
Well, so if you don't have any calcification, then okay, let's unpack a CTA for people who don't know. It's 2 passes. The first pass is an actual coronary artery calcification scan. They need to do that because the more calcification you have in your coronary arteries, the higher the radiation dose does need to be for the second pass so that they can see through it effectively, right? Now, let's say that you don't have any, let's say you have no calcification, then the second pass is going to be really low dose radiation, but they now have to apply the contrast dye. So they apply contrast dye, you're already hooked up, you've got something ready to inject it into your body. And the contrast dye fills up your lumen so that it can light up. And then you go back through again. And that one is more than the CAC, but still relatively less. In total, both of my CT angiograms, and I've had two, were 2 millisieverts each. And a good comparison is 1 year of just free living, just
Mhm.
living on the planet, walking around, doing your thing, is average of 3.3 millisieverts. So that gives a nice little baseline. I used to know what a chest
How
X-ray
much did you
was.
say a CAC was? Is
A CAC is zero point 0.6.
0.6
Yeah.
millisieverts.
So
Okay.
2
So it was
millisieverts,
like 2 months of free living.
yeah, actually it'd be that sounds about right.
Free living on the planet, probably at like, yeah, sea level. You're not sitting in the air in an airplane for, 2 months.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, not medical advice, but if you're concerned about your heart health, I just don't know why you wouldn't get imaging at least to CAC. CAC is very low dose and there's no contrast dye. I could more understand why somebody would be concerned about contrast dye than radiation exposure.
I think his argument is that his biomarkers are so good that he's not worried about heart disease progression.
Okay, that's my least favorite reason that anybody could give. Because there are a lot of people, we'll talk offline, but there's even influencers that we know of who are, yeah, I'll stop there. I'm not gonna,
Oh, I don't even know who you're referring
yeah,
to. Usually I do.
yeah.
All right.
But I'll just say this.
Have we discussed this person before in this podcast?
Um, we'll talk offline.
Okay.
We'll talk offline. But look,
Tease.
I think that if you're concerned for your heart health, nothing beats the physical detection of disease. Nothing comes close. First of all, you get to know where you're at now. Secondly, it's so predictive. How much plaque you have now can be very predictive of what plaque you're going to get in the future. And even stating that much, I think there's still quite a lot for us to learn.
Yeah.
Because there's some degree of inertia. There's some degree of backlog.
Right.
And nobody really knows yet.
So you want a baseline?
Yeah.
That was my same question about like his telomere length. I'm like, given how you live for most of your life, I'm surprised you're in the top percentile for like telomere length. What does this actually mean? I'd be interested to see what your baseline is for a CAC.
Yeah.
So just to kind of summarize some labs I like from Bryan Johnson, if anybody knows him and is listening, I like a full thyroid panel, not just a TSH, LH, FSH, a CAC or a CTA, and to get access to his references where he's getting his percentiles for things like telomere length, etc.
Well, I don't like how invested, or at least how there's a whole business model around his being invested in showcasing his
Huh.
like
I
it's
don't mind as much, actually.
well, part of it is that I feel as if too much is now reliant on him meeting the standard that he's created, right?
Okay.
So it would comfort me more if there were things he was showcasing that were in the bottom percentages, right?
But then presumably he has millions of dollars to devote to this, so they just optimize it. Get him some, $25,000 per injection therapy and just do it. I don't think he's going to be in the bottom. I think he's probably a healthy guy. He's not going to be in the bottom percentiles for anything. I think you probably can correct dysfunctions pretty quickly with what's probably a pretty comprehensive medical and scientific team.
But you think in everything that there is a reference range made, he is in the above average to very top percentage.
So that's why I'm laying out some of the things that I'd like to see, because I think if there is a different incentive structure here and his business model is built around him being very healthy, and you've chosen to be like, all right, the goal here, yes, there's a business model around it, but it was around an N equals 1 experiment. And the goal is to demonstrate my results, and you're building it on transparency around your data, then you need to continue to be transparent around your data, which means not blocking off access to what was an open access Excel sheet, providing references for reference ranges when asked for, providing things like an LH, FSH, a full thyroid panel. Like, these are not hard things to ask. People get these like all the time, and you have millions of dollars to get these tests. So I think it's only appropriate to disclose them if you set that precedent.
Yeah, why not? I put out wide spectrum blood work on me.
Yeah.
And this includes things that might be considered less attractive. So I'll throw one out at you, which is my A1C. I told you, and I've shared it on online, that my A1C bounces between 5.5 and 6.0, right? Which be considered bouncing into pre-diabetic territory,
Yeah.
right? Now, I have a longer opinion as to why I think that might be the case. It's not something I necessarily showcase. However, that's part of the spreadsheet that's up there right now. That was the actual results.
Yeah.
I could have withheld that. Didn't have to. Who cares what my A1C is for an experiment that had to do with ox LDL? But a priori, that's what I determined was going to be my wide spectrum blood work, and that's what I went and published, right? And so it can spawn some interesting discussion, but it doesn't change the fact that I should live with whatever data comes out, even if I may have disagreements as to whether its perceived value is as strong as it is. Go ahead.
No. I was thinking back to Bryan. I got reply. Bryan had a post this morning about all the things he was eating, and I posted just kind of like as like a pokey comment, like, cool, you do you, I'll do me. And then I posted like a picture of like eggs frying in anchovies with cheese. And then the thing I was thinking was somebody said, post your labs. And I'm thinking, I've published 4 case reports on myself. 4. I think that's 4 more than Bryan has in the peer reviewed literature. Like, I'm like you, like I'm out there, but I'm not pretending to be the pinnacle of health. I've genetically high LP(a). I told you about my case report about a genetic mutation I have. I've even promised, and this offer is open, with respect to my lean mass hyperresponder status, I have a full exome sequence. If you think I might have a single nucleotide polymorphism that you discover and you want me to look up, I will look it up for you and report back. Just give me the RS code. So, like, I think both of us have been pretty open about our data. That's fine. Like, we're not.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, here's another good test. Would you object to somebody testing your blood on markers you've never tested for before, right? Even if it may turn out that one or more of the markers may reveal something bad.
I would prospectively I can think of an actual instance that I'm gonna talk about, and you probably remember this instance. I would say generally no, with the caveat that I actually have to think that the outcome, like, the thing being measured is valid.
Right. Of course.
So there's one instance where somebody wanted me to get and disclose a polygenetic risk score
Right.
with respect to my propensity to have different lipid levels. And before I got the test, I said no, because I don't think this is a valid test. The database that it's coming from is opaque. It's a proprietary algorithm that, you know,
It
like,
it's also not fixed. It changes.
it changes. The percentiles are kind of a little shady to me, and I don't have confidence that you're going to actually focus on the whole spectrum, but rather dive into any one metric that comes out. And it's not even relevant because it's based on polygenetic risk for having high different lipid levels, and my phenotype manifested after dietary change. So on a mixed diet, congenital, let's say LDL level, is 90. So if I then go even on a keto diet, let's say a vegan keto diet, and my LDL goes to 400, is a polygenetic risk score that is opaque, changing the data from which it's coming from isn't really clear, but it's on a population of people on a mixed diet with genetically
Right.
determined LDL. Like, this isn't irrelevant. It isn't a valid marker, so I'm not gonna put stock in it whatsoever. So if I had said, "Oh, I care about this marker, I'm gonna measure it," and then it came out in a way I didn't like, I would, like, definitely disclose that, but I'm just saying, I don't think all markers are actually valid and useful. That's the only caveat, and I only bring it up because that was actually a scenario that manifested.
I frankly just don't even consider scores markers. Like me personally, and I'm long before you had gotten that,
Yeah.
I'm so on the record. Austin will tell you this because I complain about it all the time because he's interested in polygenetic risk scores. And he knows that I push back all the time because I don't like scores, period. Getting back to the post hoc rationalization
Yeah.
component, I just do not like any kind of post hoc determination where things are figured out after the fact,
Yeah.
especially when there can be expectations by the people who are doing it,
Right.
right? And scores are kind of a way to make that happen, which is why I don't care for them.
I mean, that particular score is pretty bad. We did end up, again, a priori saying we would not disclose it, but because it was free and accessible, did get it just as a point of interest. And it scored me very high risk for having low HDL. At that point in time, my HDL was 115.
Yeah.
Like, eh. I've also, on my exome sequencing, on the obesity section, it said I have 3 high risk genes, polymorphisms, and no protective polymorphisms identified for obesity. So,
There you go.
yeah, I'm genetics says I should have obesity, as is my childhood, but go figure.
Any day. Any day now.
And Jack in the Box
just
phenomenon,
it just all catches up.
I'm just gonna walk into a room
But
and not be
but
able to fit.
but to get back to the point I was making, if you and I are naturally curious, stay curious.
Oh, yeah.
And if you were to say, "Dave, I've got this new blood test. It detects for XYZ, etcetera. Here are the markers. Here's the studies behind it. Here's the things it could be associated with. Would you like to submit your blood for this?" I'd be like, "Sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go." And you'd probably be the same way. Again, not score-based stuff or anything like that, just straight up, let's advance the science.
Mhm.
I would understand why somebody like Bryan Johnson might be reluctant to do that. What if a blood sample would show something that could, for example, expose a particular ailment or disease or something like that, right?
I think the opposite, though.
You think the opposite?
Well, I think that, like, having just listened to a lot of podcasts with him, I think, at least in the long form, he delineates where he's using experimental tests that have not been validated as a form of gamification. It's like speed of aging test or biological age. That has not real validation, not like proper validation. And some of the other things he does, they're experimental, speculative. They are gamification. And I think you can separate that from something like a functional test or like clear biomarkers on which there is, say, all-cause mortality data or just data relevant to health outcomes. I think he can actually parse that, and he's willing to toy around with tests that are a little bit more esoteric, like speed of aging. Granted, it plays very well into his narrative because he performs well on those markers, and I don't know if he'd disclose it if he didn't perform well. It's hard to know. But in general, I think he's okay with novel and experimental biomarkers and measures in general.
So let me put this in real world terms. Let's say that you were to approach him and say, "Hey, I'll donate $10,000 to a charity of your choice if you just take this one blood test that, for example, does pick up a full thyroid panel. It also picks up a, an omega check. Actually checks all the different fatty acids, um, especially the essential ones. Also picks up a lot of nutrient deficiencies potentially, right? I feel like if I am his business manager, and I'm not even saying this is where his position would be, given this model, and this is my concern, not necessarily that my concern would be met. I would say, don't take a test for which you don't have control over the visibility of the results. In case one or more of these markers comes back and is pushing back against our larger narrative of you being the most healthy person in the world.
Hmm. We probably will never find out what he would actually do or what he would say he would do. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, provided he could be convinced that they were valid measures, he would be open to doing it. Um,
Even if he didn't have control over the visibility of the results?
I think so, because I think the narrative that could be wrapped around it, again, let's put our business hats on for a moment, was that I'm open enough to take this and then put the results in the hands of someone else. And then, let's say something doesn't come back optimal, correct it.
Right.
Because then the narrative is I was open and transparent. We identified an imperfection and then we zapped it as part of the scientific narrative. That's the picture I'd hope he'd see.
I agree.
So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and say you do that. I have no way of knowing, and I also don't think $10,000 to someone worth something like 800 million is gonna make a difference.
Right.
If we're trying to bribe with money here, I am not the person. Um, but
But this is just sort of me, fancifully trying to confront, my natural inclination under this situation because it's a tough spot. I know this from being a business owner myself and only a small business owner. It's a tough spot to be in when you feel like so many people, like their livelihoods are reliant on your business model and your leadership in it. But if I were to put it all into me as like a person and how I'm performing as a human, certain things I'm doing as a human, that's that's got to be tough. And yeah, it's not even so much that you would worry, let's say vitamin C levels would come back low. And the very same thing you're describing, oh, looks like my vitamin C levels are lower than I thought, so I should go ahead and do something about it. The fact that it could have some risk to have some spin out narrative that all of a sudden the trolls take to Twitter and they're going, see, I told you Brian Johnson's not the healthiest person in spite of what he said. Just look at this. I could totally see from the business perspective them going, oh, even if he corrects this tomorrow, the trolls are going to be pulling this narrative back up for the next 10 years.
I don't think
That
so. I think he leans into the trolls, quite honestly. In general, I think he does that rather well. Sometimes too generally, where I think he captures in people taking genuine questions and poking at his methodology as trollism. But that aside, I don't know. I hope one day we get the chance to have these conversations with him because I think it would. I think he's an interesting guy. We come from things at different angles, but I think we could have a pretty interesting conversation, in particular around metabolic health and longevity. Um, for the record, I'd love not to die and to live to be 150. And also for the record, am I slightly jealous that I don't have $2 million per year to throw into my health? Yeah, a little bit. A
You
little
know,
bit.
I actually, let's while we're here, let's then talk about I think it's his prediction, right, that we're
First,
the first generation to not die,
first generation to not have to die.
to not have to die, right? Do you think that we are going to conquer death before you have to exit yourself?
I don't know. I was in an Uber ride on the way to the first day of COSI with an older driver. We were driving through old Vegas, and he was talking about the technology he had when he was a kid. And one of the comments I made to him while holding my iPhone is like, Could you ever imagine something like an iPhone in your lifetime?" It's like, not a chance. I think just the point here is we can't imagine over the course of a human life how much technology will change, and it's just changing at, like, an exponential rate. So, as absurd and, extreme as it sounds to be like, "Oh, we could conquer death," I guess I'm speaking to the engineer here. Isn't it just an engineering problem?
Kind of. So there's a philosophical aspect to this too. First of all, I think I chatted with you about this. I originally wanted to go into AI engineering. And at the time, this is in the 80s because I'm super crazy old.
Can't believe how old you are.
I know, I can't believe it either. It's just still, but I'm in the 80s. I remember coming to this conclusion because it was already known that there were basically two general schools. I mean, there's multiple schools, but really there's top down, which is symbolic AI, and there's bottom up, which is neural networks. And the symbolic, oof, that would take a lot of processing and a lot of manpower to build. But that's where you're coding everything, right? And it doesn't scale. Neural networks does scale and you train it, but without getting too in the weeds, I'll just say that there were things that were predictable back then that turned out to be true today. For example, just in trying to imagine how neural networks would work, we kept thinking, it'd be almost kind of dreamlike. You might have even symbols for words, but actually not have the words be legible initially. That's exactly what happened, right? Which is pretty fascinating. That you could actually have things like embossed words, but literally not the letters be completely legible and understandable. That's been improved, but there's been some tricks to accomplish that. And the neat thing is this would help us to advance at an exponential rate, no question, but would require a lot of power, which sure enough it is. AI is going to surpass cryptocurrency for power usage. You want to talk about environment? That's like a whole nother topic, right? Because at the same time, we're getting efficiency gains through doing it. So the amount of power it's using also is subtracting the amount of effort, the amount of manpower that we're using to do those tasks that it can now help us with. I can tell you as a programmer, I'm easily 10 times faster today than I was before, right? So getting back to staying alive forever, I have an interesting thought experiment for you.
Okay.
I tell you I've got a new teleporter. It can teleport you to Tokyo. Would you like to go to Tokyo in my new teleporter?
I think I know where this is going, but yeah, I'm gonna say yes.
You say yes. But you add, how does it work? I go, well, it replicates you perfectly over in Tokyo. All your memories, all of your emotions, all of that, the replication of you appears in Tokyo. The version of you that gets in this chamber right now is completely destroyed immediately. But Nick Norwitz will continue existing in Tokyo exactly as you are today. And you won't feel a thing. Do you jump in my teleporter?
Yeah.
You do?
I do.
Okay, yeah. A lot of engineers say exactly what you said. I don't. I have a difficult time with that, right?
Can I give you my rationale?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess the question you need to then ask is like, what defines you? Because
Right,
the thing you're suggesting is that really you're building a clone, but I'm being killed.
right.
And what I think, when you ask what defines a human, it's not the atoms that build our body. Our atoms in our body get turned over, over the years.
Mhm.
The atoms in my body are not the same atoms that were in my body when I was 10. They're just
Right.
not. So I'm physically a different specimen. Um, and so based on that alone, I would be comfortable saying yes, I'll get in the teleporter. But even just like branching off beyond that, are we defined by our memories? I don't think so. Our memories are actually like, recreated all the time. Our memory shifts, our characteristics, our personality traits shift. There might be some underlying like consistent current. Um,
I think we're definitely defined by our memories. I think our memories are extremely relevant as to who we are.
you think if you have dementia and you lose your memory, you're dead?
I think that in a way, depending on how bad the dementia is, even you yourself may consider yourself partly dead, and a lot of your family. I mean, certainly, I've unfortunately had to kind of experience working with this with my family. I'll give you a good example. My dad's brother, because of experiences of seeing other family members on my mom's side lose a lot of cognition, knowing where my dad's brother had gotten after a stroke and his state of being, I chose not to visit him toward the very end, mostly so that I could preserve my memory of him and our last conversation, which was a really good conversation, for him,
Yeah.
and because I knew that's what he wanted. I knew that's because it's what I would have wanted if I were him.
I had similar experiences with family members. Um, my last interaction with my grandfather reached a different person. So, all right, let's work with that premise. And they were built by our memories. In that case, then by that logic, it's fine to get in the teleporter.
Right? Because the clone of you has all the same memories.
Right. So I think that there are broader discussions about, what defines a human. And I don't think memory completely captures it, to be honest, because like our memories are recreated each time we recall them. And we still add to the memory pool. So like we are changing beings. So like what is the core? Like my memory bank now, naked 29, is very different than my memory bank at age 10. Is it the same person? Because the cumulative memories are totally different.
True.
And I've forgotten a lot of things as well. So I've become a different person.
Yeah. I mean,
In a way, so what I'm saying is like from birth to death, there isn't like a very easy way to linearly like define what am I. It's not matter. I don't think memories quite captures it. It's definitely not personality traits. I think in large part the self is an illusion. It's a very good illusion. It's an illusion I enjoy, and I will engage in this game that we call, life in the self. But I do feel we are like it's actually hard to pin down the self.
it is. And in programming, there is something called a class and an instance. A class is like the blueprint. An instance is like the thing made from the blueprint, right? And so what we're talking about is this is the instance of the class of Nick Norwitz. You're the instance. Therefore, if we make a new instance of you in Tokyo while this instance dies, Nick Norwitz, there's only one instance of the class of Nick Norwitz at a given moment, right? Okay. So why then do most of my engineering friends give the same answer you do, but I don't? And I don't have an answer for that. But I can tell you it's compatible. What you're saying is compatible with permanent longevity. You know why? Because at the point where we can make an instance of Nick Norwitz's memories, his consciousness, all of that, and put it into a cybernetic machine that can live on indefinitely, yeah, we've conquered death. Now, the harder question is, can we do that biologically? That's a tougher one. I think we'll get to the first scenario
I
before we
agree.
get to the second.
I agree. That's going to be harder. The second scenario. Um, but I think yeah. I'm a,
But but don't get me wrong, the first scenario is insanely difficult because you quite I mean, This is called neural networks, which sounds comparable to the human brain, but the human brain, I know you know this, you're really into you're, you're into brain biology, is incredibly complex and incredibly efficient in spite of what you might think is an inefficient organ. It's insanely efficient, so powerful.
It's crazy. If you go to like take okay, well, you have 86 billion neurons, and then a bunch of support cells, glia on top of that. Then trillions, literally trillions of connections among neurons. And you like zoom in on any given neuron. It's not only branches, or tiny branches off of branches that are constantly growing and shrinking and dynamically reconnecting with things. To capture that and transfer it atom for atom, really, is a difficult problem, but not an impossible one. So I don't know. I'd like
Yeah.
to think that we can conquer death. I don't think we should need to die. Like, if given it's a weird thing because you ask people, most people are like, "Oh, death's part of life. It's natural." My dad, we've had these conversations, conversations. He even thinks it's selfish to want to live forever. And I'm like, no, it's a different norm. Also, will probably be in parallel with this expanding to other planets. So it's not like I have to die to create space on this planet for another human being. I think it should be part of it would be cool if it were part of the menu of options to live as long as you want, and then exit whenever you feel you want to.
Yeah. So let's expand this a little bit more. Would you like to have a perfect memory? Anything you've ever experienced, you completely retain in perfection.
It's hard. I would say, can I be selective about how I recall it?
Sure. You can even erase memories at will.
Oh, then yes. That's different. I mean, because like you could have a single traumatizing experience, like just like that is setting the groundwork for like PTSD on steroids.
Right.
But given the conditions you put out, yes.
Yeah. So you already know this as well. We further subdivide the brain into like the limbic system, the frontal lobe, and how they interact with each other becomes relevant for all of these things like trauma, right? And how these affect your behavior. Okay, but these are definitely affecting the you are,
Mhm.
right? So given that, when you, Nick Norwitz, live forever, it's not like the copy of you is not going to itself want these upgrades. So the you are now is constrained by biology, is constrained by limitations such as memory loss, right?
The me I am now, but why wouldn't I want the upgrades?
I'm saying you would want the
Okay,
upgrades,
yeah.
right? But it does mean that whatever we conceptualize as being living forever isn't just how we think, oh, cool, my brain will exist and I'll think in the way that I do now, but with like some enhancements.
Right, but it's selective evolution of you as an individual,
Yeah,
which is fine, but we do that every day in our lives. Like literally like setting a New Year's resolution. You're saying, I want to change myself,
right.
and I'm going to take actions to do that based on the tools available to me. So yeah, if there's like an upgrade that I can like sign up for where I have a perfect memory, or I can eat Oreos without a stomach ache, and be in perfect metabolic health as a cyborg and enjoy the sensation, even though I didn't even enjoy it. Maybe I'll set up for that. We'll never know.
You
Or,
watch Black Mirror?
oh yeah.
God, I love Black Mirror.
Well, they haven't had a new season in a long time.
No, and the last season was a
Pretty
little
good.
bit less about technology. It was a little,
Season 5 was pretty good, and then there was season 6 that wasn't very good.
it kind of had like some horror elements and some other stuff.
And then there was like the Bandersnatch. That was like the choose your own adventure, which was like it was such a cool idea, and it was like,
Yeah, great idea, not the best execution. But there was another one that was one of those one-off episodes, and it was with a Netflix
oh
copy. Like it
yeah,
was,
it
and
was like Inception, like
it was. There was a thing within a thing,
yeah,
and it was.
I remember that.
I just remember, remember the Michael Cera part where he's just like this computer programmer, and he himself is like aware. He's like, I'm actually just a copy of an actor, Michael Cera. This isn't even me. Is like grabbing his face or something like that. But the Black Mirror that I really remember a lot that I loved was everybody had these contact lenses and just recorded everything visually at all times. So they had this perfect memory
Mhm.
because they could always recall quickly. and just rewatch anything they ever experienced, what they saw through their eyes. And then they could throw it onto the TV and then, like, show their friends and family,
That's cool.
what they experienced. And there's a Twilight Zone-y
Yeah.
angle to it that's fascinating. But I remember when I watched that, I was like, "Yeah, that would be cool if we were at those levels." But in a way, kind of are. I
Dave's pulling out his iPhone now.
It's crazy to think that right this moment in this phone, you could pick a date. I could tell you what I ate on that date for the last
Most other people couldn't,
10
let's be
years.
clear. We can't do it.
Correct, correct. Only because I just got in the habit of just constantly doing it, and I haven't stopped yet. It's neurotic and OCD and whatever, but I'm also semi-fascinated by it that I really some poor person. You know what? It's funny, I used to say some poor person, but now I can say, "No, it won't be a poor person, it'll be an AI." An AI at some point will go through all of my records, and
Yeah.
I'll be one hell of a case report.
Do you think this is, that ability, let's say you had those contact lenses and could throw it up on screen, would increase or decrease relationship conflicts?
Well, that's part of what's in that,
I don't
Black
remember
Mirror
that
episode.
episode. I'm
Where's
just thinking
what?
about, like, disagreements I've had,
Of
with, like, my mom or my girlfriend or and, like, a lot of people, and I'm like, "I swear it happened this way.
Yeah.
I swear, like, I said this or you didn't say that." I just wanna be like, "I need to have this moment on video." Because, it's
Yeah,
funny, like, you're so confident you're right, but they also seem confident they're right, to the point that I'm like, "I can't believe I could possibly not be remembering this as it happened." But are they being actually g like, are they being honest or pretend? I don't know.
I you're talking about an age-old issue where couples are fighting about something. Each of them doesn't have a true perspective of the objective truth.
Well, you'll never know, that's the thing, because you can't replay that video.
Right.
Like, there are times I'm like, "I definitely said this." Like, 100%,
Yeah.
I'm certain I said this. I'm like, "You never said that." I'm like, "I did." Like, clearly, articulately, I said this. I need the moment from my contact lens recorder.
Now, here's what I would guess would happen. My guess is you'd throw it up on the TV, and then they'd go, "Now wait a sec, go before that." And you'd go back before that, and there'd be, like, added context that they kind of understood in the moment for what that was, that
Fine.
made it and maybe what you said wasn't exactly what you said, and then the fight becomes about what the fight shows on the TV, right?
I don't know. I think it would be a funny experiment. I can see it going really well and be like, "All right, fine, settled, here are the data," and then otherwise, yeah, going completely leftward and then, like, a whole new, like, fight buds off.
Oh, this actually I just remembered something that will make this even funnier. You and I had a miscommunication that came up with COSI, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, we should chat about this because this is a perfect example.
I was right.
I went spoiler alert, I was right. Now wait a sec, before we should set the table on this one. I For the people who were doing the alumni luncheon,
Yes.
they were also on alumni panel because they were the ones who were going to have basically, this is the gist of COSI. We ask everyone to volunteer as speakers to come. For the first COSI, there were just featured speakers and there were citizen science speakers. Featured speakers were up for 30 minutes, citizen science speakers for 15. When we were doing the second one, I was going to see if I could invite back the featured speakers from the first COSI, figuring we'd lose like half of them. And no, almost all of them came back. So I was like, oh no, we can't have a lunch that's, 5 hours long. So we'll have 3 speakers per day. But as a kind of, I don't know, compensation of sorts for them helping us out on the lunch fundraising for the alumni lunch, we'd also have a panel. And so the panel would have everybody who was in the alumni lunch, right? But the panel is for the general audience. Now, neither you nor I can state with full confidence. I'm pretty sure, but not certain, but I'm pretty sure when I was talking about the pitch of part of the challenge was you came late. You thought you weren't going to be able to come to COSI. So when we were putting together the alumni lunch and everything else, you were one of the people I thought wasn't going to be able to make it back
Mm.
for the new one. That is why you ended up not being on the website. But when I said, "Oh yes, so I've got you in for the alumni lunch," my guess is this is where things get fuzzy as to whether or not I said, and there'll be a panel for the alumni lunch, right?
But not
And
everybody on that panel that I was supposed to be on was do they all have alumni? I guess over 2 days they had lectures?
yeah, there were 2 days of the alumni lunch. And the only person that was missing, because it would have been 6, but the only person that was missing was David Diamond because he had to leave on Saturday night.
Yeah. So on the schedule, I was on the alumni lunch, but I wasn't on the alumni panel schedule. So that was the disagreement. And then it
Yeah.
kinda circled us all back around. We had well, what happened was Dave's like, "Hey, where are you for this panel?" And what had happened is I was on my way to the, conference, but then I just I had these weird bloody noses, and I just, like, bled all over my shirt, so I had to go back to the hotel to
Right.
change. And so it was, like, 5 minutes before, and I'm like, "What panel? I don't remember being on a panel." I looked at the schedule, I'm like, "I'm not on the panel. Like, my face is not here, my name is not here. There are 4 other people, and I'm not there."
Yeah.
So it was like a aha moment, but
But
that's
even
the story behind it.
even as you were typing out, "You've gotta tell me about this, bro." I was like, I know my buddy Nick, and I know right now he's just angry at even the possibility of somebody thinking for 1 second he's anything less than the triple A overachiever he is, right?
You're 100% right. I was
Exactly.
pressure to the situation because 'cause I'm, like, holding my nose, I'm like, "Why does this keep hap" First of all, the bloody nose thing has been a pain in my ass, and it's just like
Has it just been here in Vegas?
so I'm trying to decide whether or not I wanna say this. Alright, Rogan has said that he likes long form podcasts because the filter comes off after a couple hours. We're now basically 5 hours in, so you're gonna get the filter off. Um, I have bloody nose PTSD, because this season, for the first time since my childhood, I don't know why, my right nostril's just been bleeding, like, all the time, but it primarily bleeds in humid environments.
Hmm.
It's pretty humid here, so I've been having basically daily, bloody noses.
Wait, it's pretty humid here
Yeah.
in Las Vegas? In the desert?
My hotel room.
Okay.
It tends to happen with I don't know.
I'm
Well,
gonna go check the humidity after this. I bet I
we can check it in my hotel room. Okay, maybe how well, I'll get to the point of why I'm making this point. Um, Situations of warmth and humidity tend to set it off, including acts of intimacy. So, it's been interruptive to nocturnal activities, to my dismay. It's actually incredibly frustrating. And stuffing the tissue paper in your face does not help the situation.
such a layup joke that I'm gonna pass on right here, but
Wait, no, go, shoot.
I swear
We're
to
5
God,
hours.
this tissue is for something else.
That's a good one.
Anyway,
Yeah, well, I gotta get it fixed. I have to see my PCP or each AENT person. I don't know why it's happening. It's always the right nostril too, so hopefully something catastrophic is not going on.
yeah, stop with listen, you need to it's almost like you wanna have some, health handicap to slow you down somehow because you're
It worked for Gosai.
yeah.
Get my shirt dry clean now.
Yeah, so part of why it was such a funny situation was any other circumstance, had I told you, "Oh, hey, you need to be in this panel. Where are you?" And it's 5 minutes from when the panel started, you would have already been like, "Oh, okay, I'll jump in. You didn't tell me soon enough, but here I am."
I
But
was a mile away from Gosai. I would have just sprinted there. I would have.
yeah, I totally could see that. Right. But no, you happened to have been out because you'd bloodied up your shirt. So
Yeah, and at that point, I couldn't get over, but, like, I don't know. Probably better because if I knew I was on the panel, I started having a bloody nose, I probably would've just shown up, like, in full blood. Yeah, okay. Seems like a thing I would do. We're just gonna have this conversation. Just completely ignore him. But, echo the tail end.
yeah, it was the whole the whole conference. I have to tell you, man, I still it's just surreal. I live in like a perpetual state of imposter syndrome. I still can't believe the things that we pulled off doing every single time they happen. So even this conference, again, a second time, people will be coming up to me. They'll be like, "This is my favorite conference. I cannot wait until there's a third one."
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of in disbelief that it happened, even for all the work that we do to just get it together.
I know. The fact that these things come off, and it is definitely a weird feeling, like, I'm used to just kind of, like, sitting in my, like, little corner of Boston as a med student, not trying not to get much attention. I'm not very good at that, but, like, to be at these sort of things, especially given the attention the work is now getting, especially after the movie, like, literally have people asking for autographs, like, dozens,
Yeah.
and taking selfies. I'm like, "This is weird."
Wait
This is
till the
just
movie.
I know.
The movie's gonna
I it
shift it
felt
all.
so weird, especially the movie premiere, or well, not the premiere, whatever we wanna call it, the first showing, first public showing. Yeah, the number of people and the degree of enthusiasm, and also to hear people's stories. I'm sure you get this all the time, but, like, how our research, quote, unquote, "has changed their lives." Um, or, people thanking you for your service and what you do. I'm like, "I'm just a dork who likes to explain, like, science on his YouTube channel." But people find a lot of value in it, and it's just so motivating because you do it because you love it, but to see it have, like, a serious impact is special. So things like this, like this weekend, the movie, COSI, it's so incredibly special.
Well, yeah, for me this weekend, you heard my talk at the end. I really do mean to get a better work-life balance. I really have so looked forward to this, to opening up and doing this podcast, having more conversations like these. Like, this is the best. I love this, right? And this is kinda more my thing. Like, I'd love to just really stretch out, really have these deeper conversations long form. And like I said, there's a Las Vegas advantage, frankly.
Yeah.
I have a lot of people that I can mine out of here. There's so many conventions that are here where people that I'd want to interview would already be here anyway.
Yeah.
And it's so cheap to fly here because the casinos supplement it.
Vegas is pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And yeah, everything's like close to Harry Reid. I actually really like Vegas.
Yeah.
I've been here twice and now it's growing on me.
Why don't you move here?
Uh, who's in residency for the next 6 years at least, and fellowship. I don't know how many fellowship options there are. So
It's true. This probably isn't
best medical is Vegas.
exactly a top tier.
Yeah, I know, and living in different cities is a no-go. Otherwise, I'd probably be open to it. So longer term discussion. But it does have its appeal, except for the summers, which are brutal. Last time I came here was in July, and oh my goodness.
Well, yeah, that's
I
right
know.
at the heart of it. I'm so used to it though. Like I walk around the afternoon in
iguana.
July. I don't care.
Well, when we walked the main strip, you took me out there. I was like, I have not adapted to this environment.
But you saw me, right? Like I'm just
You were fine. That was the thing. I was like, I think of myself as like pretty like athletic and tough. And Dave's just like walking around like a happy little iguana, and I'm just like melting.
yeah.
Like I'm from the Wizard of Oz or something. Somebody just poured water on
We gotta do the escape room again. That was
that was
such
fun.
a blast.
It was your first escape room.
Yeah, I'd never done that before.
Yeah. It was
Now-
a puzzle.
Now I feel like it,
Better.
I know there's another meta to thinking about how they arrange things. So I feel like I would be better at picking up on would-be clues
Yeah.
because the the engineer in me is already thinking in terms of, okay, all things that are loose and pick upable are probably something that's going to be in use. So you want to like quickly gather them and catalog them as fast as you can.
Well, I'll do it again. We were also just it's usually like a 2 to 8 person, and there were just 2 of us. So like you have like fewer brains working on the puzzle.
Right.
We made it a decent amount.
And it was a tough room, right? Wasn't it like
was
the
like
4 out of 5
series
or
of
something like
rooms,
that?
Yeah. But it was like we got through like 2 of the rooms, and then we were like the last part of the 8 room.
Right.
And we had this like what was it like sewer type puzzle. Like it was like a hydraulic just something.
Yeah, to like rearrange so that
They ended
the
up- Yeah, we would have
Feel
waited
like
out. We didn't
place.
have the time.
yeah.
What do we spend a lot of time on? Like organizing sandals or something.
Yeah.
It was like a puzzle and organizing sandals and finding pieces. It was something.
Well,
It was a cool room.
it was. It was once you get into a little office. Anyway, we're gonna lose like everyone on this part because they don't know what the hell we're talking about. But
How many people do you think are? We're probably approaching. Oh, we've broken 5 hours.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We started what around 10. Yeah, we're coming up on like 5:15 or something like that.
yeah. I think what we'll need to do is go to at least 4:15. For anybody who's still here, like props that you made.
This
You know,
is
it's gonna.
This is like a literally a full audiobook.
Here's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be Austin and Eric. Because we love you guys. We love you guys.
There's a few devotees. Maybe we'll become famous enough that it'll just be like after the movie, like a good time capsule. You're just gonna see the engagement on this episode. Like be like, oh, somebody sees it, it's 5 hours, nobody's watching it, and then sometime like end of the year, it's just like, oh, let's spike, see what Nick and Dave have to say, like completely candidly, because at this point, like I have no filter. You could ask me anything about like my early childhood life, my sex life, I don't care. I'll just spew.
You know, this actually might be a fun moment to just go into some predictions.
Okay.
So, genuine prediction right this moment. Where do you think cholesterol code ends up? I can't reveal anything that I know that you don't.
I don't know. This is totally a blind.
That's why it's good to ask you, because you don't know anything. Where do you think it ends up? How well or not well do you think it does?
I'm gonna say Amazon Prime, and then Netflix is gonna be pissed off they didn't take it. I think Netflix has a bias against what it's covering. I think they have like a plant-based bias, so I think there's a possibility they will pass on it. Although I do think the end is so artfully done that it might hopefully allow them to feel like they can adopt it. I don't know. Because I do not think this is a documentary that like, speaks to just one diet group, just a keto. I think it is something that appeals more. I do think it's going to be in Netflix or Amazon Prime. I'm going to guess Amazon Prime.
Okay. Do you think I have no idea on this one at all. Do you think there's any chance it's in a feature slate on whatever streamer it's on, whether it's Amazon Prime or not, such that you actually see it
Yes.
ranked or shown on the main page?
Yes, I do. I think it's that good. I mean, it is just that good. I realize other things have the bells and whistles, like we were talking about the vegan doc, like, okay, it has the Stanford brand associated with it. This is just higher quality.
That's why I think
Quality is undeniable.
that's what I'm counting on. So getting back to the plant-based bias, I do think that there's just a lot of helping hands, if you will, that get it more into place. And I don't know if there's necessarily push down hands, I guess you could call it.
Oh, there are.
But
we've already gone through like many examples to this podcast. There are pushing down hands. There's like a sledgehammer to the head.
But you're right. At the end of the day, the streamers respond to
Engagement.
Yeah, engagement. So
freaking amazing story.
it really is. It's just such a great flick. And I love, love, love that you were not only in it, but you're so prominently featured. Your story. Yeah. Actually, I've got a question for you. The footage where you're in bed, was that your mom that was just taking that at the time?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's powerful footage, man.
Well, transparently, that is not authentic footage from back then. And you can kind of even tell because I'm not that underweight looking. My beard is more full.
Gotcha.
I can tell you when that's from because that was reacted. Genuinely, I was at one point in time very underweight and sick in a hospital bed. But that footage was from, remember I had the cluster headache?
Oh, yeah.
So the cluster headaches, for people who don't know, they're also go by the name of suicide headaches.
Yeah.
Because they hurt like nothing else. And I actually woke up from sleep and I thought I was like hemorrhaging in my brain. I wanted to pull my eye out of the socket. Turned out it was just a cluster headache, which actually are not that atypical in males my age. It's totally not dangerous. It's just crazy painful. But at the time, I didn't know what it was, so I went to the hospital. Cluster headaches, they blow over in like 15 minutes to 3 hours. So then it like blew over. But I was just getting some lab work. At that point, the film was in the works. I think we had I forget exactly the timeline, but I actually had the peace of mind because, once you bounce back from a cluster headache, you're fine to be like, they might need this footage. So I happened to be in a hospital bed and I took imagery.
You had what was
because I was in EKG, and in a hospital bed. But some people that watch it will notice, like, I don't think it's a spoiler, but like they cut from pictures to me, and one I'm like writhing in pain, which first of all, in the cluster headache,
it wasn't acted pain, right?
Well, in this case, actually, I'm being dead honest. It was because my cluster headache had resolved by that point in time. I was fine.
Yeah.
So that was probably that was the only moment in the movie that was probably in the whole movie that was actually acting. For what it's worth. I hope you don't mind me saying that. But in the sake of transparency and honesty, because there was a time when I was writhing in pain in a hospital bed, but I don't have footage from that time, and if you contrast, because it cuts from that footage to a footage of me looking underweight, like my face, you'll just see I look like I'm a different weight because when I was back at that point in time. I thought about that when I saw the film. I'm like, I wonder if anybody else picked up on that, but probably not. Because it was far enough away that you wouldn't really think about it. I very much saw it because I know what I look like.
Right.
I just didn't take imagery from that time.
I think it moved along through it pretty
But
rapidly, so I don't know how many people picked it up. There's sort of one part in the film that wasn't me acting per se, but the editor was kind of creating the narrative where, for example, I said, "It was my first conference," and they cut to some footage where I was outside of Wyndham, and it was, like, Low Carb USA,
yeah,
and it was in 2023 or
yeah,
something like that, and then also where I was walking around the hallways of Low Carb USA
yeah,
2023, and so I was aware that that wasn't actually footage of me getting shot at my first conference,
yeah,
but it was so that it could kind of paint the narrative,
yeah.
and I I did kinda have my little moment of going, "Do I feel like that's inauthentic?" I mean, technically not. It's you could argue it was like a sort of unintentional dramatization by the editor.
Well, you need to do some things to support what's an authentic narrative. So we can come up with a few examples. I mean, like me writhing in pain in a hospital bed, like it, it is something that like I spent a lot of time doing
Right.
in real life.
Right.
I didn't have footage from that point in time. An opportunity arose to get that footage. So it's the actual moments isn't reflecting my ulcerative colitis pain, but that is something I really went through that then I reenacted for the purpose of the film. I think that's fine. And I also feel very fine about candidly revealing that in this conversation because people should have the right to know that
Well,
that was like, I
yeah,
don't know, like I have no reason to want to hide that.
right. But that's so different than you went to the hospital, you have a bunch of Harvard friends, you said, "Hook me up to a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and get on this," and, like,
Even if I did that though, even if I like, I'm gonna go recreate this moment for the film, like I suffered for years with UC. Like I had moments of, I literally had one day where I tried a medication that kind of went awry. So my sphincters were all constricted and I was having peristaltic movements. So I spent 24 hours on the floor of my apartment in Oxford, just writhing in pain until it went away.
jeez.
I have no imagery from that moment. It happened, and I had a lot of other moments of pain. So to reenact it for the film, I don't think is dishonest, and I also don't mind to share that it was a reenactment.
Right, right. Like, you're being upfront about it
Oh
being a
yeah.
craft, right.
Or what other thing? I mean, like when we did the looking at my heart scan, like it's not like the moments. I'm with a professor. It was just like a professor of mine in radiology at Harvard. She's a real Harvard radiology professor. We were really in a lab room looking at my heart when she was going through it. It wasn't like the first time I had seen the scan
Right.
being taught about it. It was like, we're doing this for the movie. We got permissions from the hospital to go in. That's fair.
Yeah, and
'Cause you're not gonna kiss somebody in their like first medical encounter most of the time.
this also comes up when you're just I mean, straight up, this also comes up when you're just getting different angles of shots,
Yeah.
right? So, you can really go down a rabbit hole when just discussing this. So, for example, when, I'm walking into Budov's office, they're going, "No, now we wanna get a camera angle from here, and now we wanna get a camera angle from here." It wasn't like there was literally these 5 cameras that happened to catch me right at the time that I'm heading into the
Yeah.
linguist building. Obviously, they're getting it from the different shots, but it is interesting because there was a recent film, I can't remember what it was, and they had a picture of I don't know if it's a protagonist or the criminal of interest or something like that, where they used AI to generate what would have been
Mm,
a possible but it looked like an authentic picture that was taken of her
yeah.
at a given moment. That one started getting a little bit funkier.
Interesting.
But again, how much are you conveying what's real and what isn't in the through line?
Yeah.
It's a tough question to answer.
I'm thinking of a funny moment. There was a team from Korea that came to my apartment to do coverage of the egg thing. It was really big in Korea. And so they wanted footage of me cooking eggs and eating eggs. And one of the shots was me like having like, a dozen eggs on a plate fried and I'm salting them and then I'm eating them. But they kept doing takes. They kept re-salting egg. And at one point I feel like I have now doused this with like an 11th serving of salt. But you can't see it because it like blends into the yolk. So I'm having the saltiest eggs of my life. just like cruising through them, pretending it's just like me naturally eating eggs, and I'm like, this probably single egg has 2 grams of salt on it now. Not that I mind having high salt, but like I know like I was eating salt, I didn't even taste the eggs.
I like virtually any low carb food. I like to salt the heck out of, and it's almost impossible for me to oversalt except eggs. Eggs are the one thing for which I can't oversalt.
Yeah.
Or let me put it this way, that it can get too salty easier than the other foods.
Yeah, I think about eggs. Although you do to enjoy salty omelets. I can speak to that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, that omelet you made at your mom's house, I dream of that omelet. It was
To
amazing.
remake it. Sorry for the V2 that I snuck broccoli in.
Yeah.
I've never seen Dave so disappointed. I was recreating this omelet. I think the original omelet was.
When I felt so bad because I didn't want to be, because you literally made
I
an
can
omelet
tell,
plug
I
in.
can tell. You're like,
I'm like,
put broccoli in this. I'm like, it was like I had broccoli there, and I had not snuck. I just put it there because I thought, like, oh, this is a reasonable thing to put in,
yeah.
and it just like,
Nah, that original one with the capers and the
anchovies, and I think it was cheddar cheese.
Oh my gosh, so delicious.
And well, like you dissolve the anchovies in, or some of it in, like the butter or the oil, and then you fry the eggs in that, and you put the anchovies in. But like it, and with capers is a salt bomb.
Yeah.
But it's like a complex flavor mesh. It's not just like pure salt you tossed on. Like anchovies have their own,
and it has that nice mouthfeel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I did the other day that was great? I make homemade Caesar dressing. I was thinking about that because of the anchovies. So what you do is I dissolve anchovies in avocado oil or olive oil, and then you blend it with egg yolks. Toss in cheese. Parmesan's typical, but I actually use Manchego. And you blend it until smooth. You can add more oil, things like garlic and salt. But it's such a good dip, and like you put it in an omelet or something, like a homemade Caesar omelet. Caesar dressing on an omelet. It's freaking good. Toss some bacon in there as well.
I like how, I think it's actually Harvard, and in fact, is known for having really strong science in its culinary arts. Because, of course, if you really get up there, you need to kind of understand chemistry to be a good cook.
Oh, I don't know much about Harvard. And you're just talking about like molecular gastronomy or something.
Yeah, things like
Not like as you say that, I'm like everybody. I can see just people like waving their hands in the air, like School of Epidemiology. Teach man.
Yes.
Dave. No, but with molecular gastronomy, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I was never an elegant cook. I was kind of all like the messy but yummy looking.
That's fine. I like messy but yummy looking.
Yeah, that's typically what I do. I like making a mess in the apartment.
You know, we should, before we wrap up, we should actually talk about that for a sec. So it does seem like there's a lot of, let's just call it tension with the Harvard School on the epidemiology side, particularly when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be any changes about that in the future?
Yeah, I do. I mean, first of all, people think of Harvard as like homogenous with respect to their opinions on like animal versus plant-based diets. First of all, Harvard's a large university. Like, there is not homogenous opinion. There are even pro-carnivore people at Harvard, quite a few, and pro-keto people. The fact of the matter is the plant-based people do get more play in things like Harvard Health, which are determined not by like medical doctors, but just like people putting out the publicity. So they tend to steer more towards the mainstream because that's just the people that are like selecting out. In addition, there are one or two big groups. We talked about Walter Willett before, who just like in research, people who have a lot of momentum tend to get big publications that tend to get covered. So the publications tend to get covered. Not to say that like other publications, like say by David Ludwig, won't get covered, but on balance to a lesser extent.
Right.
So I think you get a weird filter. And, you know, it's funny when people say, and Harvard says X, Y, and Z. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like some person at Harvard Health, neither MD nor PhD, just some person chose to write up this narrative and write up tips. Like it does not represent my point of view or my position. Or for that matter, basically any other person at Harvard. It's the perspective of whoever wrote that single article, who might not at all be like, you know, I would say trained clinically or scientifically. They're just picking out the things in the literature that pre-exist and choosing to amplify it in a particular way.
I think the media likes to do that, though. It likes to.
That's what I'm saying. But like the Harvard Health is media.
Right. Oh,
It's not the paper. It's not like people like when people see the headlines, it's not like they're seeing the headlines of the neurology journal. They're seeing the coverage, and that coverage is selection out of what is available from the university. And when you think about how big Harvard is, you know how many publications it puts out routinely, and then you're selecting from that. So,
Here's another prediction question. Carnivore diet in particular, is it going to be more mainstream in 5 years from now?
yes. People think it's a blip. I think it's just going to become more and more mainstream and as a viable option. I think it's going to go the same way as keto, where it's seen fringe originally and then it just becomes a thing that people do. Like if you tell someone, like just your average old person, "Oh, I'm keto." Now I don't think there's as much of a stigma. Like yes, it does get into like awkward territory at parties with alcohol or like on birthday parties with cake, but in general people accept, "Oh, this is a viable thing to try." Right?
Uh,
But if you say you're carnivore to your average person, they're like, "That's weird." I think that's gonna go away.
Interesting.
I think it's also gonna go away with more media play, like, to the credit of, what did the Post or something to cover my video, like, they're willing to cover it now, and it's gonna start discussions, I think. And also, I think journals might be more receptive to entertaining case series, which are gonna lay the work for randomized control trials, which are gonna make this viable options for certain medical conditions. So, as soon as you have doctors on board with the fact that, okay, for a patient with inflammatory bowel disease, this might be a viable option of treatment, then I think there's a trickle down effect and also a bottom up effect. So I think it's gonna be coming from both directions where people just in the community have success with carnivore and then, it spreads that way. I can already tell you, I know at Harvard carnivore doctors,
Hmm.
they don't like prescribe it for the patient, but like who themselves are carnivore. During COSI, I got a text from someone who's basically carnivore. In fact, after the New York Post things came out, I tweeted the thing and they just tweeted back immediately, like of all the steak they were eating because they had just finished a 7-day fast. They don't talk about it publicly because it's just like,
Because there's still the stigma.
there's still the stigma and it's like not their thing. We talked about all the different issues individuals have. And if like you're a busy clinician or a busy surgeon going to like your next surgery, you don't want to create a headache for yourself or put a like a target on your back for being known as the carnivore doctor within your institution if it's not your issue or area of interest, or frankly, you're just too busy to have to like fend off questions about that topic. It's more like I do this because I like it and it makes me feel good and it makes me feel healthy. And bear in mind, I'm talking about like, MDs, high level accountings, even full professors at Harvard. But it doesn't mean they want to like create a headache around the issue in their life because they're focused on other things. They're doing it for personal reasons.
That literally goes all the way back to the beginning of what we were talking about.
Right.
And not wanting to open up a front in some area that you don't want to deal with especially if you're already working on something that's controversial.
Right.
That makes it that much tougher.
So I don't bemoan them, but it is funny anytime things come out with respect to me, the amount of accolades and applause I get like internally from Harvard, including attendings and residents. And they also poke me, let's be clear. When something comes out, inevitably, like when that like, a red meat is bad for brain health thing, I'm getting attendings from Harvard like texting me like, "Hey Nick, have you seen this? Are you gonna respond?" And I'm like, "You want to?" And they're like, "No, no, no, you do it. You do it." And I'm like, "All right, fine." But like it atheists in the clergy is what I'll say. And I think as it becomes socially acceptable to be more out about it, it's gonna be just like a no big deal thing, like coming out of the closet. Like, a long time ago, I think, I'm probably still, I shouldn't speak because I don't have all the life experience, but like maybe in certain places of the country still, coming out as homosexual is probably very, very difficult. I know, well, I don't know, but I presume it was even more difficult, say 50 years ago. Now it's not as much a stigmatized thing, especially in certain circles. Maybe it comes off as a callous analogy to make, but I do feel like certain dietary patterns, the stigmatized ones, fall along that same trajectory. Where there's a point in time where it's just like awkward to say I don't drink or I don't eat any sugar, or I don't eat any carbs, or I eat just meat. But I think it just changes with time, and people become more tolerant as they become more exposed and informed.
Yeah, it's hard to say right now because the issue is that it ties into sort of these larger themes. There's while it's thought to be that a meat-centric diet is very unhealthy, A, hey, that's fine. You may be you may be helping, say, your ulcerative colitis. You may be helping your type 1 diabetes, but you're going to die sooner of heart disease. B, there's the environmental vector that's going to continually be brought up, that this is unsustainable. There's I'm not going to call him out, but there's a senior researcher that we work with, that a tweet that I put up that said something about carnivore diet. One of the conversations I had with that person next, they were going, that meat is unsustainable for the environment. This was a very prominent low carb person. And I was like, well, I wasn't specifically promoting the carnivore diet. I was just kind of commenting on it and so forth. And I think I literally think this was like maybe 5 years ago, 6 years ago, something like that. And he went on it for a while, and it was just about the environment. It wasn't even about the health component. And,
But it's like it's just a separate issue. I mean, you can come up with a lot of examples. Talk about anesthesia. The anesthesia department in a given hospital, like, I think the gases they use, I'm not an expert, but I think, like, the anesthesia department generates a lot of, let's say, environmental pollutants. Are you gonna say, "Hey, patient, you don't get anesthesia. You just gonna have to, like, bite this towel for the surgery we're gonna do because greenhouse gases." Like, no, it's a tool that you use for a use case. So I'm not saying 8 billion people should go carnivore, but that doesn't mean that a patient suffering from a crippling disorder who can benefit shouldn't try it.
yeah. Well, not that I wanna step into this battle at all, but I hope anybody who's trying to suggest a dietary movement with regard to the environment starts with local versus global sourcing. Like,
So food
that's
waste. Food
yeah.
waste. The number of, like,
Yeah.
plant-based people, like, or I mean, just people in general, let's say, eating a standard diet, like, the amount of food that gets wasted is absurd, and that
Absolutely.
generates a lot of greenhouse gas emission.
Well, I probably prioritize pollution and forever chemicals way more than most people do. In the prioritization list of things to worry about, I think, um, I'm very worried about that, particularly with what it's doing to the oceans. Like,
Oh, yeah.
ridiculous.
You see some of these documentaries, and, like, they're heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, that's aside. Actually, there's a good one I was just watching. Barack Obama narrates on Netflix, Our Oceans.
Hmm.
It's pretty good.
I think you even mentioned that you were watching that. It's a series, right?
Yeah, on Our Oceans, but it's well done. And I mean, love him or hate him, amazing narrator. It's one of those voices that you're just like, "Oh, that's so nice."
All right. I think we're get is there anything else you wanna cover that we haven't covered?
Oh, we're not only at the halfway mark? What are we I think we're at, like, 5.5 hours.
Yeah.
It blew by. I wasn't I mean, and I have to admit, around 4 hours, I was just curious. I'm like, "Wow, it's been 4 hours."
If I didn't so I'll fit this in because it's an irony. I really honestly think just us both being competitive and fully aware that we could just keep doing this
Oh,
forever.
yeah, this is easy. I'm not, like, so clear, we have not taken a pee break or anything. We just we're literally yeah, so
And it
just
doesn't
talk straight.
and it's not even hard.
Hours. It
It's
was so easy.
right.
You wanna go talk about Marvel movies for a bit?
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh,
Well, I'm gonna fit in this one thing, and then we'll jump into Marvel movies. My only issue, the reason why I've been kinda, like, losing my voice a little bit is that while I thought yesterday would be a relaxing day, there was an Own Your Labs, let's call it a hot fire that I had to take care of. So, there's a
what is it?
platform fix that kept me up until 2 AM last night.
Oh,
Yeah, and so
alright.
I got hardly any sleep, and I'm still a little bit peaked on sleep, but I knew this would be relatively easy.
This is so easy.
Yeah, and I do have, a meeting, that's shortly after this, and, uh, Bill and Aislinn are actually gonna be arriving here pretty soon, so that'll probably be the hard cutoff. But for everybody who's made it this far,
We don't actually we can also do Marvel movies I mean, it's not any big ones, right? We have A Brave New World coming out. There's been
Captain
nothing
America:
much
Brave New World,
on Disney Plus.
my expectations aren't super high. This is why I like chatting with you. You're still fully excited for every single thing Marvel, and
Yes.
I'll
Well,
concede
every single thing. Things that come out on Disney Plus, like, I have not watched What If season 2. That was just disappointing, or
I
actually
did.
all along. I'm excited for the big milestones.
Yeah, so it's good that you checked down on Agatha all along. I watched the very beginning of season 2 of What If, and I couldn't take it. I dropped off, and I know there's a season 3 that came out. I couldn't watch that either. I'm just hoping it's not canon. I'm hoping I don't ever have to watch any of it.
My rule is if it's gonna become canon, then I'll watch it.
Yeah,
And if it's like a tangential thing that's just kind of like half-assed,
right.
then I will. So hopefully they step up. But things like Loki 2 were amazing. I have high expectations for Brave New Worlds, Thor 5. I'm optimistic. And also there's just a lot of good things coming out. Invincible season, is it season 3? Yeah, season 3.
Mm.
First 3 episodes are out. You watch Invincible,
I
right?
like Invincible.
It's great.
It's
Have you
great.
seen any of the first 3 episodes?
Oh, season 3 is out? Oh, I did not know that. Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Episode 4 comes out Thursday.
No, so
You have to watch that. It's so good. Severance, new season.
of course I watched Severance, although I missed the last one because of Kosai.
I haven't watched the last one. I think I might watch it tonight. Fluff a little bit of
Love Severance. It's so good.
No, there's a lot of good TV. So
That's another thing. I'm going to do some
White Lotus is coming out on the 16th next season.
White Lotus is some of the best television I've ever seen.
White Lotus is great.
It's so well written.
Yeah. So yeah, no, a lot of things. Cobra Kai, the final end of the last season.
That's the one. That's the one
Most
I
people
haven't.
haven't gotten into it.
Yeah.
People haven't. I will just say it has no business being as good as it is. There are now 6 seasons, and it actually is, I think, great.
I think I got through season 3. Season 2 or season 3. I can tell you what's at the end of it, but I don't want to spoil it for other people just to know where I'm at, that you would know where I'm at. But
Okay.
you're saying it's worth
really
sticking it out.
I really like it.
Okay.
And then there's gonna be like the Karate Kid Legends. I don't know if it's gonna be related to that. As Jackie Chan and Ralph Macchio.
Oh, no kidding.
That'll be fun. And then we're looking forward to the next season of House of Dragon, whenever that is. They've done a great job so far.
Yeah.
Although season 2 is basically like anticipation builder, basically,
Right.
with the exception of one incredible episode.
Correct. Yes.
There was one great episode.
I know we're jumping all over the place for anybody listening, but House of the Dragon first season is chef's kiss. It managed to completely realign us all back into, okay, Game of Thrones is back.
Yes.
And this is freaking fantastic.
Yeah.
And the thing about season 2, and you know the behind the scenes of what actually happened, right? So season 1 is 10 episodes long. Season 2 is 8 episodes long. It turned out it was supposed to be 10 episodes long.
Oh, why they cut?
Writer's strike.
Damn it.
Now it makes sense, doesn't it? Because when you watch season 2 and you get to the quote unquote finale of season 2, you're like, "What? Because it doesn't feel like a season finale." And a lot of people, myself included, I was like, "Oh,
Well, okay, that makes me feel a little bit better, though.
Right.
Because I feel like
Made me feel better, too.
it's gonna be, like, credited forward.
right." So there's an episode in season 2 that's maybe
Wait,
one of
you
my
can just say spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Because honestly, at this point,
spoiler alert. It's episode 4, and it's like one of the best episodes I've ever watched in any Game of Thrones episode ever.
I need TV.
It's just it's like a movie. It's a straight up. Anyway,
Hagar just moving like an absolute tank, like your room shaking. Then the moment.
Yeah,
Torches his brother.
good. It's just such a good show. Anyway, so that's what's nice. What's nice is that there is good television. We're
into it.
Yeah, we're both streamer geeks and MCU geeks, and there's lots of good things ahead. And there's this new movie, Cholesterol Code. I hear it's coming out soon. I don't know which theater yet.
I cannot wait. I'm gonna be plastering it over all the walls of everywhere.
You know what you're gonna need to do? You need to set up an IMDb profile. Because on IMDb you will be listed in the credits now. So you'll actually have, I think I'm in there, but I don't have a profile picture, but I'm gonna actually update that now since I'll now have another credit. I'll technically have been in 2 movies.
What was the first one?
First one was Fat, a documentary by Vinnie Torridge.
Oh, cool. All right. Remind me to do that before September. Wow. I'm so excited for what's to come. We should also plan a podcast for right after it launches. Or the month after.
100%. Listen,
We need to have Adrian up then.
I intend to get this thing like hot, where I'd love to be recording at least 2 episodes a week, but ideally more. And it's just a matter of getting the bookings in and not having too much competing stuff that's happening. But particularly as we get closer to when the film actually premieres, there's going to be more need for me to be chatting with people, including people that are in the film or connected to the film in some way.
Cool.
Going to be a big deal.
I want to plant a seed of an idea. So you had two questions that you started off the podcast with. I've been listening to more Diary of a CEO, and one thing Stephen Bartlett does, I don't know if you listen to that pod, but he always has a guest leave a question for the next guest, which is the last question on a given pod.
Okay.
So it's like Nick V would have left a question for me, then I have to answer it, and then you kind of pay it forward.
Sure.
I love that tradition.
I like it. I'm happy to carry it forward. What would you like to ask?
I didn't actually think about that before I brought this up. As I was talking, my mind can run on two tracks, but I think a good question would be for the next guest. What is the last major scientific point on which you changed your mind, and what made you change your mind?
Do you know that's a question I asked at the beginning of the panel you were late to? That literally was. It was between the last COSI and this one. What's something you've changed your mind about?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, what's the next guest?
What's my question? Since you were on that panel, you just came late. I'll pose that question to you.
I'll tell you offline. I want the guest to.
You want the guest to answer that question?
Yeah, originally.
Yeah.
But I mean, you probably can intuit some of the things that I might say. How about this? What do you think I would say?
My head immediately heads back to the videos you make. If I had to guess, I think the red light therapy might have been one thing where you got your mind changed. Am I wrong on that?
No. Actually, that was probably going to, I'll just say that probably would be an element of my answer. The degree to which light biology is important for our biology. I do think it's an area with a large paucity of evidence, but when you start to think about, like, the fact that mitochondria are photoreceptors, it goes so far beyond, like, top-down signaling from the brain. And so I think it's an area of great potential interest. So that, yeah, I definitely don't feel as strongly about some people in the space. There are definitely some characters in the light biology space, who I'm not big fans of. But that aside, do I think light biology is important? Yes. So really now I'm branching out into things that are just outside nutrition. I explored a little bit with cold plunge. I actually have a video. I don't know how I'm going to title it, but I have one option of a title, which you're going to love, and so I'll tease it for people, which is how oxidized omega-6 are healthy. So there's depth there, and it actually has to do with cold exposure.
I think that's a great title, frankly.
I'll tell you a little bit about it when we sign off, but I'll just tease it for people. So, yeah, no, there are levels of nuance. It'll definitely be a clickbaity one. We'll see how many dislikes and trolls I get. The thing about the YouTube, which is so funny, and you'll get this too, you'll get all these comments with people attacking you on a point where I'm like, this is directly addressed in the video, and I say the direct opposite of what you're claiming I say. Like diametrically opposed.
Almost as if they haven't really listened closely to the video.
The thing, people comment before watching. So they will comment on the basis of a thumbnail. And I'm like, this was intentionally, like, you see me looking surprised as like a walnut in an ice cube, and saying, oxidized omega-6 are healthy. You don't think there's a little bit more to the story here? It's like, how dare you? It causes obesity, let me tell you. And they go off this diatribe. The best, though, is when somebody makes a comment and then to their own comment replies, oh crap, I didn't finish watching. Because a lot of people don't edit their comments for some reason or delete them. Like if I did that, I would just delete my comment and then post that comment. But a lot of the times they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't finish the video. Sometimes you get to it later, they will have already corrected themselves, but left up their original comment.
It makes me think of this is probably a bit before your day, but in forums, it was a common thing that if somebody put up a post, there was like some sense of pride in just trying to get in there as fast as you can to comment. So there'd be the first person that said first.
Oh, some people sometimes, it's cute when they say that, but usually it's just like the comment will literally be like first comment award. Yeah. Or something like fastest thumbs. And then you give them a like.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, it like I said, the emotion, the data don't care about the emotions, but the algorithm loves them. So if you make a shallow attack, generally it's more helpful than harmful. But anyway, I'm having fun with it.
It's almost to your benefit to have a thumbnail that's gonna get
Huh.
the
Like
right.
me with a bunch of eggs and the big number 720.
That's
Wonder
right.
how that would work.
Turns out,
Uh,
works well.
all right. Well, this is so fun. Somebody has to tell Joe Rogan we beat his record.
I'm sure he's waiting with bated breath. He's going, "Wait. There's a podcast out there that had a longer
I'm sure he gives
runtime?"
0 fucks,
Exactly.
but we're competitive. And when we're gonna have this podcast, that I think my first thought was like, we could talk forever. And I'm like, I'm like texting you like, let me Google the longest Joe Rogan podcast because that is our baseline.
Right.
But the thing is, like, even if that was a target, we didn't even have to try. This wasn't like we got to a point in this conversation where like, oh, what else can we talk about?
Right.
It just rolled through.
No, and what usually happens is when I'm thinking we're about done with a particular topic, I'm, like, already kinda reaching into the next topic, and we'd stayed mostly on nutrition, touch we didn't even really talk that much, for example, about lean mass hyperresponders and lipid energy model per se.
We didn't even
We
describe the lipid energy model once.
exa
We were talking for probably close to 6 hours, and we have not described the lipid energy model one
Right.
time.
But I love that we got into immortality, right? And we kinda have to thank Bryan Johnson for that,
Like
for
I said,
helping to bring the topic forward, right?
he is a good conversation starter. I hope people listen to like our conversation, specifically with respect to him, and hear it as constructive criticism and genuine admiration and respect for certain sects of what he does. But with, it also provoking, hopefully having a conversation
Right.
about areas of disagreement, which is what is interesting in a conversation. If everybody agrees on everything, it's boring as fuck.
Well, and not that we're trying to keep reworking him back into the conversation, but I do kind of want to.
To his credit, if that's happening, I'm like, that's a good thing for him.
Exactly. But I do want to expand a little bit. I think it's good to just sort of chat about influencers in general. This kind of also relates back to you, right? There there really is this interesting phenomenon getting back to how this is new media too, how you yourself are the brand, right? It so comes back to the person actually containing, as opposed to, say, the show starring a person. So there really is this kind of celebrity component
Yeah.
and how entire teams, people. Okay, this might be a little bit controversial, but OnlyFans, great example, right? There are people who are talent who have an OnlyFans channel who are employing 20 people, right? And are making a very large amount of money,
I
right?
see some of the sums, tens of billions. Like, it's actually crazy.
Correct. It's but that said, it kind of shows just how much the art of being an individual that attracts a lot of attention
Yeah.
based on more than just one vector. It's across all these different vectors becomes very relevant. So it's not enough for the thing you're talking about, the thing you're into. There's also just who you are as a person, how that presents. And to that extent, we're likely going to be talking about people like Bryan Johnson, just like other people are, because I would say he's fairly charismatic, right?
Very charismatic.
And so by the same token, there are, in some cases, people who are kind of charismatically antagonistic, I guess you could say, right? I don't wanna pick on it on any particular person
They might have come up in this episode.
that hasn't come up with this person,
Oh.
but somebody sort of regularly cited as such an example would be like Logan Paul,
Oh,
right?
I was gonna I won't even go where I'm
Where you thought you were gonna go. Right.
gesturing. Anyway, but yeah.
But, and this isn't me trying to find intentionally somebody who I can, Logan Paul is extremely successful. But all of that said, it is a fascinating time because where I think you are charting a new course is I think you're going to be a new media exception toward stronger science communication. What I mean by that is we definitely know and have even communicated with many people who are definitely, they're leveraging social media and especially YouTube to accomplish getting out these different videos. I think that you're going to take it to the next level. I really do. I think, and go ahead and put me on the record right now. I think this time next year, when we're recording this, February 11th, I'm going to put you at 800,000 subscribers. That's what I think. And I think that's a safe bet. I think that's the floor. You may be over 1 million.
I have some plans that I'll tell you about when we get offline that might, well, I'd like you to be right.
Yes.
Anyway.
I doubt your plans are going to be like, actually, I was about to take a break for 6 months. And
No, I'm actually like, I have some familial obligations coming up where I'm going to have not as much time to work. And there's a part of me like, damn it. Actually, I'm going to Italy, for example, for my mom's 60th. And I'm like, this is nice, but at the same time, like, oh, there's so many things I could do with this like fragment of vacation that I would otherwise have to work on my project. So I'm very motivated. It's going to be a pretty amazing year, especially after graduation. Because oh man, then the shackles come off.
What am I thinking? You're definitely going to be over 1 million a year from now. I keep forgetting about the documentary. Documentary is going to be a big deal.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see where the numbers are. I mean, thus far, I've exceeded my own expectations many a time, which are generally pretty high for myself.
Right.
So
I've watched it in real time. Although I think there's more often times than not that I had higher expectations for where you would be than you did. And to flex, I've been more right than you have on those higher numbers, coming to fruition, including your YouTube subs. I knew you'd be overtaking me much, much sooner than you thought you would.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's growing nicely. Year one, like basically 0 to what, 150K? And then skyrocketing up from there. Somebody told me, one of the groups I might be working with, contracts yet to be signed, but about like there's like some graph, I think I'll find it online, about like what Mr. Beast's growth trajectory, like how long it took him to get from like 0 to 1 million, then from 1 million to 10 million. It was something like, and I'm just reciting the numbers as I had them communicated to me verbally, but like 13 years to get to 1 million, then 3 years to get to 10 million. And like, it scales quickly. So
it's parabolic.
What's happened thus far is me basically solo, me with one editor, but handling all my own social media while a med student and doing research. Like, imagine what happens when I'm not a med student and I have the skills and team around me, add MD to my PhD. Like, there's just a lot of opportunity. I mean, the optics help, whether or not the letters actually matter to my ability to process data. But yeah, no. And let's say I have a little bit more liberty to speak when June rolls around. So anyway, I look forward to that.
All right. I should probably wrap here.
I think so.
It's
no one's hanging along anymore.
Yeah.
There are literally human beings that could have run multiple marathons during the duration of the
right.
I'm not kidding.
Right. That's but that said, yeah. It's maybe when you're back here again,
Yeah.
we'll like really clear the day.
We'll just
have the longest podcast
What's the
ever.
world record? We have to find it. The longest single sitting podcast. We could break that record.
Oh,
I like even if it's like 12 screw 12 hours. Easy.
I mean, you don't know how crazy people get when there's a record as to what it takes to break the record. So I don't know. Look it up. But
right,
I doubt it's 12 hours. I'll bet it's something ridiculous like
really
38 hours or something ridiculous like that. I don't know.
All right. Well, this was fun.
It was. Thank you for coming and adding to the slate. Not sure exactly when I'll be launching this, but probably June, I think. Also.
Cool.
So, all right.
Amazing.